Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Chrissy Raywalk, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at the University of Delaware. One of the things that I appreciate and enjoy most about leadership is that it's a journey, not a destination. It involves lots of different twists and turns, and you need many different types of people to go along with you on your journey in order for it to be successful. So today, I invite you to start your leadership journey with this podcast. Enjoy.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 1Q Leadership. This episode will be hosted by one of our guest hosts, Kendi Hilliard. Kendi is a student athlete with Illinois State and she's also an intern in the athletics department. Take it away, Kendi.
Hello, everyone. This is Kendi Hilliard, a current volleyball player at Illinois State, and I will be guest hosting this episode of One Question Leadership Podcast. On this podcast, I have Katie Smith. She is currently the Associate Director of Business Operations for Baylor Athletics. Katie was also on the volleyball team at Baylor, where she received countless of Big 12 honors and earned All-American status. She finished her career with the second most kills in program history. Hi, Katie. Thank you for coming to talk to me on the podcast.
Hi, of course. Thank you for having me.
The reason I wanted to get you on the podcast is to discuss a little bit about your transition from being a student athlete to your current role on the business side of athletics. My first question is, what do you do as the Associate Director of Business Operations?
Yeah, so the 30,000-foot view of my job is basically anything in the athletics department that touches some type of money, which is something that I get to play a role in. So essentially, my job is I'm the liaison between campus and the budgets that were provided by campus and our specific sport programs and then administrative units within athletics. So essentially what I do day to day is try to make it so that our head coaches and our director of operations basically take the financial burdens of their job and I handle all of that so that they can focus on their teams and on their programs and actually being in the gym. So I kind of get the opportunity to work with them and see how I can try to help meet the needs of their programs while staying within the budget of the university.
How have you applied what you've learned in your undergrad years and in your grad program to what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. So my undergraduate degree at Baylor was through the business school, but it was sports sponsorship and sales. It's a program that Baylor has that I'm grateful I did because I think it gave me more of a specific view of the business side, the sales side of sports. In the role I'm in now, I also find benefit from getting my master's of business administration because that just gave me kind of a better background of the financials and knowing that I was interested in going into college athletics. I was able throughout that MBA program to tailor a lot of my projects to things related to sports. So if I had a marketing class or a finance class, I was able to kind of pick certain companies or certain athletic departments that were more interesting to me and kind of make that more general MBA specific to my goal of working in athletics.
So as a student athlete, when you were at Baylor, what were some of the activities that you did to show your leadership and just your love for business?
Yeah, so I think some of the biggest ones were being involved in our student athlete advisory committee. I think, and all schools have it, but I think just the opportunity to lead in that role, not only with your specific team, but kind of getting to build those relationships with athletes across all sport programs was huge for me just in building those relationships that I even still have now. But that, and then we had a Leadership Institute program that focused on emerging leaders. So starting out my sophomore year, I was in that program and they would have one or two student athletes from each team be in that program. And we would just go through books with our character development team. And it just gave you that extra little bit. I mean, you learn so much from just being on the court and being a leader within your own team. But I thought that Baylor provided a lot of resources that helped me kind of take that to, okay, what does this look like when I'm trying to apply it to a job? What does this look like in the real world as opposed to just on my team currently?
Yeah, as you said earlier, colleges do have SAC. I'm currently the new vice president for Illinois State. if you could go into detail more about what you did, how SAC impacted your life now as a person on the business side.
Yes, absolutely. That's so exciting. Congratulations on being vice president. I think that for me, and so when I started at Baylor, the SAC program wasn't as developed. We didn't necessarily have as many resources into it. And then by my senior year, it kind of was revamped. So it was fun to get to be part of that process. But I would just say for me, SAC really gave me the opportunity to have those conversations and relationships with our executive team and including our athletic director, Mac Rhodes, that I think as a student athlete, and I say this all the time, but I think part of the magic sometimes is almost not knowing what all goes into it, but finding out through SAC and finding out just kind of as I became a junior and senior and started getting interested into the industry was, wow, there are so many jobs and there are so many things that go into creating this experience for student athletes. So SAC kind of gave me just those relationships to be able to talk to that executive team and see, okay, what does this AD do, or what's this one do? And that's kind of how I started getting interested in our business operations department and just kind of seeing the way that I could kind of have the best of both worlds, where I could still have this job that I could use my MBA and be excited about being in the business world, but also use it to find out what I was passionate about. So I think SAC really helped me figure out that that's something I could maybe love.
Yeah, so I loved hearing about your leadership experience and with SAC and just about your whole transition from being a student athlete to your work as a business person now. So you and I both know what it's like to transition from a block to a hit in a volleyball game.
Yeah.
So what were some of the challenges you faced when you transitioned from the court to now working in athletics?
Yeah, I think it's definitely different. I mean, anytime you change from, because I think high school to college is different, but you still kind of have that sport. You still have a team. It's very similar just because it's what you've always known. So I think for me, transitioning into the office, while it was still something I love and something I knew about, it was just a different environment than you maybe are normally used to with a team and you're working out together and things like that. So I think overall the biggest challenge for me has probably been, so college volleyball, for example, it's okay, I have 4 years and it's very much segmented into 4 seasons. You have off season, then preseason, then conference, then postseason. And there's kind of always this focus on, okay, here's the next thing. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Whereas I feel like in your career, there are definitely benchmarks and building blocks to that point, but we're talking about a 40-year career versus a 4-year career as you're a college athlete. So I think for me, it's realizing how to break up kind of on a higher level of, okay, how do you break up this career and, what are your little benchmarks throughout the way? And kind of some of those are given by your superiors and some you have to create for yourself, but even tailoring it down to, okay, what does that look like in the everyday where it's not, oh, I have this 3-hour practice where I'm focused. It's okay, I have this 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 8 to 7 job that I need to use my time as well as possible. So I think for me, it was figuring out, okay, how do I stay motivated in the short term day to day, but then also how do I build that long term to kind of start when you're in these early stages of a lifelong career.
Yeah, so you've been working professionally for quite a few years after you've just finished playing. So what are you doing since COVID-19 happened? What does your job entail now?
Things are, I think, different for everybody, but with my job now, it looks a little bit different. Personally, for me, working from home, I love being around people. I love being in the office. So that's been different for me, just having to communicate all via Zoom or FaceTime or calls. But I think for us right now, it just looks like on a financial side, trying to figure out, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. There's a lot of uncertainty in athletics. How can we make the best decisions today and communicate well to our whole team, to our whole athletic department when there is still uncertainty and there's still things that are unsure? So it's been a unique challenge, but definitely I think having this type of experience, I've learned a lot so early in my career because this is such a unique time.
So you've had several positions as a leader on the court, and I foresee you having several leadership positions once you get on with your career and everything. But as an athlete, how did you determine what type of leader you wanted to be on the court?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I feel like for me, I would always look at, okay, who are the people that I saw as leaders? And usually, so before me. So I specifically think of, okay, who were those seniors my freshman year that I looked up to, or even juniors or sophomores or people my age? But it always kind of comes back to, it wasn't the people necessarily for me that I looked up to that were the loudest. It wasn't the people who got in your face. It wasn't things like that. For me, it was the people who were good on the court. So I would kind of translate that to this, similar to the people who I look up to in the office, of people who are good at their jobs, they're diligent, they work hard. And then every single time when I thought about those people, it's the ones who cared more about serving their teammates than being in the spotlight or being in the limelight. And kind of like I mentioned before, it is so interesting how you can see that translate to your career, of just people I work under that I value so much because they are selfless and they're servants and they're worried more about their team and serving the people under them, like myself, than they are necessarily about putting their name first and getting credit for themselves.
So as you were playing throughout your college career and everything, can you think of a moment where you were like, wow, I'm the leader of this team. How am I setting the tone for the team around me?
Now I sound like the old person who's reminiscing on their sports days, but I do feel like it's those moments where, for whatever reason that everyone hates, whether it's you're on your 30th sprint on the line or you're just in a horrible drill in practice where it never seems like it's going to end. I feel like those are the moments I go back to where it's like, okay, this team is at their wits end here. We are tired. We don't know what we're doing. And they're looking for someone to try to get them out of this drill, or someone to bring positive energy, or even relating that to a game. Like, we are down and it's not looking good, but how can I separate myself and how can I hopefully bring a little bit of glimpse of hope to this drill or this game? So those are probably the specific moments where it's kind of like, okay, if I don't step up, who else is going to?
You've been through several preseasons, two-a-days, the fall season, spring season, everything in between. And how are you staying connected to volleyball ever since you graduated?
Yeah, so that's kind of a funny one because it is crazy. That transition is difficult. Not only just changing every day, but this game you've played for so long, this game you've become an expert in. Yeah, I'm not putting on my knee pads every day, which might be best for my body. But being at Baylor has been so fun for me because I've been able to stay involved with specifically our volleyball program and other student athletes as well with business operations. We all kind of work with each team, but we'll have specific sport contacts. So volleyball is one of my direct sports that I oversee the budget for. So that's been really fun for me because I still get to work really closely with the head coach that I played for, Ryan McGuire, and his staff, who I just think the world of. So it's fun getting to have a slightly different relationship with them, but still being able to kind of be in the weeds of the program and knowing, okay, these purchases, I know how that benefited me as a student athlete. So it kind of ties you back to your mission. And then in addition to that, the past few seasons, I've been their color commentary on their broadcast. So they're on ESPN Plus now. So I do the broadcast with John Morris. And that's just so fun because like I said, you have all this knowledge from when you played, and it's such a subset of knowledge that when you're not playing, you don't necessarily need to access. So for me, it's so fun to get to watch the team and support them and talk about them on the air.
Well, Katie, since similar to you, my goal is to work in college athletics after I'm done playing. Do you have any advice for me as I work towards this goal?
Yeah, I mean, even after talking to you about your involvement in SAC and the things that you're doing at Illinois State, it seems like you're already taking so many steps. I think for me, it's figuring out, okay, how do you separate yourself, like as a student athlete going into working in college athletics? You already have such a unique subset. And I talk to my coworkers about this all the time because it really is such a blessing to be able to do a job every day when you know that your work is resulting in an incredible experience that you're getting to experience right now. So I think for me, the things that were most beneficial were anything that I could capitalize on during my time as a student athlete in terms of relationships with our administration or even coaches. And just, I think success in working in college athletics comes from being able to relate and understand a lot of different personalities and a lot of different mindsets in terms of what department people work in, if they're on a coaching staff. So I think my biggest recommendation to you would just be to cultivate those relationships, but also to get as much hands-on experience with the administrative side of things as you can. And even if that's, meeting someone through SAC, meeting an AD of compliance or something that you just might not know a ton about right now as a student athlete, and knowing that they're in that role because they care and love student athletes, and reaching out to them and having conversations and just learning more about what they do, which would also just kind of help you get an idea of, okay, within college athletics, what exact department do you think you might want to look at and things like that. So any relationships, conversations you can have would probably be my biggest advice to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So a quick question about just the difference between reporting to a supervisor and then reporting to a coach. Can you tell me about how that process is and like how that's going for you and what's the differences?
Yeah, it is different, but I think it comes back down to you are still trying to do everything you can to, like a coach, impress your coach, impress your supervisor. And there are a lot of similarities. I always joke that there's a difference between, and my coach wasn't even much of a yeller, but I don't think my boss is ever going to just yell at me in the office. And so I think that's different because I think sometimes you're used to a coach, punishing you by getting on the line and things like that. And in work, it's just obviously not like that. Like, we're not running sprints because I didn't turn in a report on time. And so I think sometimes the relationship is different because now, similar to a coach, you're working towards the same goal, same with a supervisor. But I think at times in your career, there will be accountability that comes from your supervisor, but also it kind of has to come from you, because if you're, again, another example would be if you're late for work, it's not the same as if you're late for practice, but that does add up and it does affect the way you are disciplined. So I think I always just laugh because looking back, there's probably in your work life not going to be a time of your life like any coach you've had or people yelling on the court and things like that. But I think there are so many of those things that made you a good player, that are making you a good player for your college coach right now, that if you try to carry those over in terms of discipline to the way you perform for or serve your supervisor, I think there are similarities. The punishment just won't look the same.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question that kind of ties into that question. How do you determine that you're successful with the work that you've been doing? Because like with volleyball, you got the accolades and the All-American status and just records and everything. So how do you determine that you're successful in your career today?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. I think, not to say there aren't accolades, but I think it goes back to what we talked about in college volleyball. You're right. There are these benchmarks of, oh, at the end of the season, I could be up for Big 12. After that, I might be up for All-American. And that isn't as much, obviously, of a thing when you have this big, long career. There are those highlight moments. There are things that you can get recognized for when you're elite in a certain area or a certain department or things like that. But I think that's where it really comes down to how important it is to respect and think highly of your supervisor, because a lot of the time, like you said, a supervisor being a coach kind of gives you that same motivation of, okay, Katie, I know you're doing this right because of words. And sometimes that might look like a raise or a promotion. But I think the biggest thing, to kind of tie it back to your coach question, which this was a perfect follow-up question from that, would be that similar to when you respect your coach, you want to perform for them. When you respect your supervisor and you respect the people above you, you want to continue to kind of, even if it doesn't look like an All-American award or a Big 12 first team, things like that, you want to perform and do better just because they kind of are able to encourage you through that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for that. So here's my last question, and I have to ask you because I'm a volleyball player and you're a volleyball player who's seen so much experience at so many different levels. So I'm going to put you back into a volleyball scenario, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so you're back playing in the Farrell Center against Texas, and it's in the fifth set, and it's 15-14. Y'all are down 1 point, and Texas has a serve. Your setter is about to set you the most perfect set, and the opposing middle is late. So you have a huge seam in the block, and you have a mixed match against the setter on the right side.
Okay.
How are you scoring on this point?
If the middle is late and I have a huge seam, I'm probably going straight over that smaller setter's head.
Exactly.
But a little to the right so that the middle says, oh man, I should have gotten there.
Well, thank you, Katie. This has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you dropping your All-American knowledge on us.
Oh man, yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in, and as always, I'm Kendi Hilliard, and go you Redbirds.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.